Good afternoon. My name is Ylenia Aguilar, and I am the Southwest Field Organizer for Moms Clean Air Force. I'm based in Phoenix, Arizona. Our mission is to protect children from air pollution. We envision a safe, stable, and equitable future where all children breathe clean air. I would like to welcome you to our Clean School Bus Program educational webinar. Today, we will be discussing the program, the health and economic benefits of the buses, and how your school can get support to apply for zero-emission school buses. Before I introduce our speakers, I'd like to quickly discuss why Moms Clean Air Force is such a strong supporter of zero-emission buses. Nearly 300,000 children in Arizona and approximately 150,000 children in Nevada ride the school bus every day to and from school. The vast majority of the buses run on diesel engines, which produce carcinogenic diesel pollution that triggers asthma attacks, interferes with learning, and harms the heart. Electric school buses are a better choice for our kids, and in today's conversation, we'll discuss why we are fighting hard to give our kids a safer ride to school. I would like to take this time to thank our speakers for being part of this webinar and being willing to provide their time to promote this program. I would like to introduce our first speaker, Esperanza Perez, who works for the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency's Region 9 Pacific Southwest Office as the R9 School Bus Lead and DERA Tribal Coordinator. Esperanza oversees various projects and partnerships to reduce diesel emissions under the Diesel Emission Reduction Act grant program. She supports projects that fund the adoption of innovative cleaner vehicles, engines, and other technologies. Esperanza, welcome. Could you please explain to our audience what the Clean School Bus program is and walk us through the application process?
Hi, thank you for that intro. I have a couple of slides that I will share. Let me know when you can see the screen.
I can see it.
Okay, awesome. So thank you everyone for being here today. So I will be going over the EPA's Clean School Bus program and providing a little bit of insight on how to apply and what the program is about. So for those of you who don't know, the bipartisan infrastructure law has allowed EPA to provide funding for the replacement of old school buses with cleaner zero emission and low emission school buses. So this is $5 billion over 5 years. This from FY22 to FY26. We have had two funding opportunities already, the 2022 rebates and the 2023 grants. And currently we have the 2023 rebates funding opportunity open. So the 2022 rebates, we had offered at least 500 million in rebates, and application-wise, we received nearly 4 billion in requests for school bus replacements. And due to the high demand, we ended up upping that 500 million to 965 million. So this has funded approximately 2,400 buses in about 400 school districts. This year, we have the 2023 Clean School Bus rebates, which is similar to the previous year, and I will go over some of the details later on, but we are offering at least 500 million for the replacement of old buses with cleaner and zero emission school buses. Under the statute, we are able to prioritize certain applicants, and I will go over that prioritization criteria in the coming slides. So who can apply? These are the categories of applicants. So we have state and local governmental entities, public charter school districts, Indian tribes, tribal organizations, or tribally controlled schools, nonprofit school transportation associations, and eligible contractors. So that typically means OEMs, dealers, private school bus fleets, etc. So the prioritization criteria, like I mentioned, we under the statute, we have the ability to prioritize certain applicants. We can prioritize high need school districts and low income areas, rural school districts, Bureau of Indian Affairs, funded school districts, and school districts that receive basic support payments for children who reside on Indian land. And what this prioritization means is that you will, if you are a prioritized applicant, you will get more funding per bus than a non-prioritized applicant. And in order to find out whether you are prioritized, we have a list on our EPA website where you can look into the list and see if you find your school district name. If you are not prioritized, that doesn't mean you can't apply. It just means that your funding amount will be less than a prioritized school district. So speaking of funding amounts, we have different funding based on the size of the school bus, the fuel type of the school bus, and whether or not the school bus is serving a prioritized school district. So for a prioritized school district that is requesting a electric or a zero emission school bus that is class 7 or greater, you can receive up to $345,000 per bus. If you are a non-prioritized school district, you can receive $200,000 per bus. And this funding amount is for both bus and charging infrastructure if you are looking for an electric vehicle. In the previous years, we specified the amount that would go towards infrastructure. This year, we are combining them so that school districts have the flexibility to divide that however they see fit. You know, if they have a bus that they're able to get for 300, that they can have that remaining 45,000 for the infrastructure, or however they want to split that. Additionally, this year we are offering an additional 20,000 if you need ADA compliant school buses. So if your bus replacements require ADA compliance, you can check in the application and receive an additional 20,000. For those school districts that are in Alaska, the territories, anywhere that's not the contiguous US, you can also receive an additional 20,000 per bus to cover the high shipping cost. And lastly, there are IRS tax credits. So EPA obviously is not part of this tax credit opportunity, but we want everybody else to know about it because applicants may be eligible for the tax credit. We don't have a lot of information on that, but we highly recommend that you visit the IRA website so that you can see if you are eligible for this tax credit. So the eligible buses, there are various criteria for eligible buses, but I will just go over some of the important ones. So for a vehicle to be eligible, it needs to be a 2010 or older diesel-powered bus that will be scrapped if selected for funding. If a fleet does not have a 2010 or older diesel bus and they are requesting zero emission, then the school or the applicant can either scrap a 2010 or older non-diesel internal combustion engine bus, or they can scrap, sell, or donate a 2011 or newer internal combustion engine bus. All buses must have a gross vehicle rating of 10,001 pounds or more. They must be fully operational at the time of application, and they must have served a school district at least three times a week on average during the 2022-2023 school year. Now, for the replacement buses, there is a variety of requirements. For all the information, I highly recommend you read the program guide, but some of the important ones are that they need to be either electric, CNG, or propane. They can't be diesel. It has to be a new vehicle, and conversions aren't accepted. So you can't get a bus that was diesel that was converted to electric. It has to be a new electric or CNG or propane bus. And they must be a model year 2022 or newer. Again, there are more requirements. The buses have to be purchased, not leased or leased to own. And they can't be subsidized with other federal grants. So you can use state grants, you can use other private funding, but you can't stack federal funds with federal funds. Again, for all the information, there's information on our website and in the program guide. So here's just a nice visual of which buses would be eligible. So depending on what bus you have, you can look at this chart, or you can look at the program guide to see if that bus would be eligible. I did say that the funding is for if you are requesting an electric vehicle or a zero emission vehicle, that part of that funding is for infrastructure. So the infrastructure portion of it does have some funding restrictions. The main thing being that it has to be anything behind the meter would be eligible. Anything that's on the utility side of the meter would not be eligible. And again, there are additional requirements, but please look at the program guide closely for those requirements. One of them being if you are requesting chargers that are level 2 chargers, they must be Energy Star certified. Okay, so now that you know somewhat of the requirements, we're gonna go into how to apply. So I've mentioned this several times, but please look at our website. It has all the information. It has webinar dates. It has the program guide. It has even application guides on step-by-step how to fill out the application. So please look at that before you try to start the application process. The second step would be to make sure that your organization has a SAM.gov registration. You will need to have a SAM.gov registration to be able to access the application. So please make sure that you have a registration and that it's an active registration, because they do expire. So make sure that it is currently active. After that, you can go ahead and log into the portal, fill out your application, fill out all the supplemental application forms, and just make sure that you submit by January 31st, 2024. So SAM.gov registration, I mentioned that all applicants must have this SAM.gov registration. SAM.gov is what we use to distribute the funds. So you need to have a active registration to be able to receive funds. In addition to that, we are linking the SAM.gov with our application portal. And you must be a point of contact within an entity's SAM.gov registration to be able to access the application. So these are the 4 points of contact. We have business point of contact, an alternate, and government business point of contact, and an alternate for that. So if you are listed as one of these 4 points of contact, then you will be able to have access to the application to then be able to fill it out and submit it. I did say there are supplemental application forms. So we have a couple of forms, and they all depend on your situation. So if you are a school district and you are applying on your own, we ask that all applicants submit a school board awareness certification. And this basically is just a form letting us know that you have informed your school board that you are applying for this program. The next one is if you are a school district partnering with a third party, the third party needs to have a school district approval certification. And this is for us to know that the school district and the third party have been in communication and the school district is aware that someone is applying on their behalf. And the last one applies to those who are applying for zero emission or electric buses. And this is a utility partnership agreement. Again, this is just for us to know that you are in communication with your utility because you're going to need your utility to get all the infrastructure in place for that zero emission bus. And this is just a screenshot of where you can find our application. You go to our website and there is this yellow box that says click here, and you would go there, log in, and then you'll have access to the application. And the last thing, selection and notification. So selection is based on a random number generator lottery process. So it doesn't matter when you submit your application, as long as you submit it by the deadline, you will be placed in this lottery, and then, you know, it would be randomly selected. There is other information about, you know, us making sure that there's a broad geographic distribution, et cetera. But all that information is in the program guide. Okay. And here are just some important dates. I believe you might have access to the slides. If not, I'll make sure that I send the slides over so that you all can take a good look at this. The important thing here is that the deadline is January 31st by 4 p.m. Eastern. After that, we expect to announce selections in April of 2024. And very last thing, if you are in Region 9, or even if you're not in Region 9, so that's me, so it's California, Nevada, Arizona, Hawaii, and the territories, we are having office hours for everybody. So starting in January on Tuesdays from 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Pacific time, we will have office hours so that if you have any last minute questions as you're completing your applications, feel free to stop by and we can answer your questions in real time. There's a link to the registration, and you can also use the QR code to sign up for the office hours. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Esperanza. That was great. In Arizona, we have approximately 1,300 Title I schools. So a lot of people in Arizona a lot of schools can benefit from this information. I really appreciate you. And just for clarification, I did not mention this in the beginning, but we will answer all questions at the end. So we are receiving your questions and we will answer them. We'll make sure that our speakers and our guests are able to answer the questions at the end after everyone has presented. So thank you very much, and such insightful information. I'm a former school board member and have benefited, was able to benefit from the electric school buses and know what a difference it's made in that school district's community. So I'm really grateful for this information, and thank you, Esperanza, again. And now I'd like to present our future speaker, Ms. Jane Israel, who is a clean energy and climate change expert who is currently the Western Regional Manager of Market Development at Highland Electric Fleets, where she supports school districts to understand how best to electrify their fleet. Thank you, Ms. Israel. And if you'd like to please share a little bit about the role and explain how schools can utilize Highland fleets for the application process.
Yes, sure, happy to. I'm going to share a couple of slides. So hopefully you all can see my screen and that looks good. Perfect. So thank you so much for having me. As was mentioned, I'm Jane Israel with Highland Electric Fleets. Really excited to be here to discuss with you all about, the funding opportunities and to highlight some of the sort of implementation steps that are needed to sort of electrify your school buses. Obviously, very important to apply for this funding. It's super significant and can really get you on your path to electrification. But then would love to touch upon sort of the what happens after that as well. So just a quick overview of Highland. Again, in case you aren't familiar with us, we are an electrification as a service provider, and we partner with school districts in all aspects of the electrification process, from grant writing to site planning, to procurement, to staff training, to having, managed charging solutions. We bundle all of these services together into a performance-based contract that has an annual fee that the district pays that we try and align with their, existing transportation budget. A couple of quick highlights on us and sort of where we've been in the last 5 years. As of October, we've now driven over 1 million electric miles across our 20 plus projects. And because we're performance based, we focus actively on uptime across our vehicles and chargers, and really work to ensure, that we're solving problems for our districts as quickly as possible. And I think that is sort of showcased in the other two kind of points on this slide. Before we get into kind of the weeds of electrification and the implementation process, I did want to take just a quick moment here to speak about the sort of broader benefits of electrification. I know we heard a couple of those points already at the top of the call, but obviously there are many different benefits that school districts can take advantage of. I think these sort of all can be clustered into maybe three broad buckets that I'll quickly outline. The first broad bucket certainly is focused on community health and the environment. These buses have zero tailpipe emissions and are transporting students through the community directly, more so than potentially other medium and heavy duty vehicles, right? So this not only has benefits to the students who are sitting directly on those buses every single school day, but also to the broader community that's inhaling NOx and particulate matter. I'll say this is in particularly beneficial for areas that are already overburdened by poor air quality, right? This is just one additional medium and heavy duty vehicle that's causing, pediatric asthma and other aspects that are disadvantaging communities. And as I think, as a Colorado resident, and as I think we think about the Western region more broadly, some of the worst air quality in the country is within our states because of our local geographies and the sort of growing fire seasons that we all experience. And so reducing these particulates is becoming even more critical, not to mention that transportation sort of looms large as one of our biggest emissions sectors as a region. So maybe I'll go more broadly, and then I'll go back to community. And I already sort of touched upon this, but there are, of course, these climate benefits associated with electrification. Electric vehicles really are the only vehicle that you purchase today that will actually become cleaner over time as the electric grid transitions to more and more renewable energy. And so it's something to think about, and it's super exciting, I think, both at the local and then macro level of the climate. You can see these broad-based benefits. I think if I pivot to maybe the second bucket of benefits here, those are really centered around resilience. So as large mobile batteries, these buses can serve as more than just vehicles that are transporting students, but really as community assets that can provide, power potentially to a school auditorium that's used as a storm shelter when the electricity has gone out, or it can be used to, shift renewable energy like solar from low usage times of the day, like noon, when folks aren't, using a lot of electricity, to high peak times during the day. So there are all these kinds of resilience community benefits that I think we're just starting to talk about really when we think about school bus, but they're there, and the usage cycle of these buses really makes them conducive to sort of help in this particular way, which is very exciting. And then the final bucket that I'll highlight here really has the direct benefits to the school districts, right? These buses, while expensive, initially, have less maintenance than a traditional vehicle, meaning that, the budget, from a budgeting perspective, they're easier to plan for once you're able to take care of that upfront cost. And as Esperanza already mentioned, right, there's quite a bit of funding right now to sort of help you cover those upfront costs. We also hear sort of some anecdotal pieces of information from our drivers and from the teachers who receive these students after they've been on the bus. The drivers tend to like them because they're more quiet. They're able to actually hear the students behind them and have more of a communication with them. And then we hear from the, teachers that because the students aren't yelling over each other on the bus at the beginning of the school day, they're a little bit more calm and ready to actually enter a learning environment after being on electric buses. So again, like very anecdotal pieces of information, but certainly something that I think we can all agree has tremendous benefits, especially to our teachers who are already dealing with so much with students every single day. So the kind of like, why now? Why are we focusing on this? I think Esperanza already did this work for me in sort of outlining the EPA's Clean School Bus Program. Obviously, there's a significant amount of funding that's available at the federal level right now for districts to sort of take advantage of and to begin to pilot potentially these buses at a significantly reduced cost to what they would be paying if they were to buy these buses outright without those incentives. So broad-based policy support. I think we also heard, about the tax credits that came from the Inflation Reduction Act already. These tax credits, the 45W and the 30C, depending on your specific location, are both providing potential benefits both for funding the electric buses themselves and for funding the infrastructure. I know EPA just did a very specific webinar on this like a week and a half or 2 weeks ago. I'm sure they've got that recording up. So if you want to go back and take a look at how you can take advantage of that specifically, I think there's a lot of really good information there. The quick note that I will make about that, and I think Esperanza already touched upon this, but for the first time in IRS's history, they enabled districts to that typically, they're tax exempt to actually receive these tax credits on their own. And so there is a path for you to directly receive those tax credits. So something to keep in mind. And again, those can be stacked directly with EPA school bus funding and other sort of utility scale funding, should that be available within your specific service territory, utility service territory. So again, once you stack all of these different pieces of funding together, you can really receive a significantly reduced cost pilot project that can really benefit your district and see all of those community benefits that I just walked through. The other thing I would say here, or two other things, I guess, since the first purpose-built electric school bus was developed in 2015, there's been a massive amount of industry growth, implementation, and deployment of these buses sort of across the country and in Canada. And we've really seen, a fairly significant change between the one bus that was available to now every single major OEM and several electric school bus specific OEMs deploying a wide range of different classes of electric school buses that you can take advantage of, and many districts have already started piloting those. And then there's sort of the business model innovations that we've also seen in recent years. Highland being one of those, right? Finding ways in order to enable districts to sort of overcome the kind of upfront cost struggles and see a more standardized and consistent payment plan for electrification that's not focused so wholly on year one costs. So all of these things together, I think, make this a really appropriate time to take advantage of both the funding and then also know that you'll be actually able to implement. So what does it take to actually implement an electric school bus? So let's say you receive some funding, very exciting. I think there's many different pieces of this puzzle that you then have to go through in order to successfully implement a project. I would say starting with the planning, understanding your existing routes, understanding, where your depot is located, what the interconnection with the local utility is going to look like within that depot, understanding, how you would like to do electrification, whether it be, 2 buses in 1 year to 5 buses the next year to, 15 buses the following year. Like actually having an implementation plan, I think is so critical because it enables you to think beyond your first deployment and do sort of smart infrastructure development pieces that are going to enable you to have cost savings in the future, right? So laying additional conduit is like a good example, right? You may want to do that if you're planning in the next 5 years to add additional chargers to your first installation. You don't have to buy those chargers today, but you may want to lay that conduit in order to enable future electrification to happen. All of these things cost money, so developing a comprehensive budget is very important, and thinking through how you want to fund these buses. Obviously, with the availability of grants, you can take down a lot of the upfront costs of purchasing the vehicle and the charging infrastructure, but there are other components that happen after you implement a project, right? The cost of the electricity, the cost of the maintenance, ensuring that you're charging buses at the right time so that you're not getting demand charges from your local utility. All of these things should be considered and budgeted for because those are ongoing, right, operations costs that need to be considered. Then you can build your project. You're going to have to train your drivers and mechanics. While these buses aren't like fundamentally different than a diesel or a propane in terms of how they drive, they are slightly different, and so that requires training. It requires training of your facilities staff so that they understand, maybe some tips and tricks to that electrification process and what a successful charging implementation actually looks like. And then ensuring that the charging infrastructure is there, ensuring that you have charge management software to sort of help you keep these buses up and running, and then of course maintaining them as well. All of these pieces are sort of key to the implementation process. And so something to begin thinking about now, even as you're beginning your grant application, right? Because all of these things will have to happen within the sort of 2-year implementation timeline that EPA has for these grant and rebate programs. This is a sort of silly slide in terms of that it's sort of an eyesore, but I think it provides a good context for all of the steps that are really part of this process. We typically anticipate that this full implementation cycle takes between 12 to 18 months. EPA, I believe, gives 24 months to implement. And so you want to be, within this time frame of implementation in order to have a successful project. And you'll notice that there's many steps in this process to think through. And many of these pieces of the puzzle often involve broader stakeholders. And I think this will be not surprising to any school district who's on the line right now. But there are many different stakeholders within a given school district that need to be informed, that need to be brought along in this process. I know Esperanza mentioned the recent addition of a school board sort of notification letter that's part of this application cycle. That's just one example, right, of many different stakeholders who need to be brought into the process, brought in early and engaged so that the project can be successful. I think the other sort of core person or people on this in this stakeholder group is your local utility, right? Making sure that they understand what you're doing, what your timeline looks like so that they can plan appropriately for you, make sure that you're successful on the energizing of the depot. I won't say much more about this, but as I already mentioned, once you have a project implemented, there are other steps to ensuring that, the ongoing process of your project is smooth and streamlined, and you're able to, serve the primary function of these buses, which is delivering the students to and from school on time every day. And so I'll just end by thanking you. We at Highland are always happy to help districts think through this process, to help districts apply for this funding and look out for other available funding. And so to the extent that you would like to reach out or have additional questions for us, always happy to talk about that implementation side of things, and really want to thank everyone on the line for having us here today.
Thank you, Jane. This was all really insightful information, a lot of information, but very necessary to know how, what Jane and what you, Esperanza, and you are doing, and how that you guys work together. So yeah, and I love the slide where you were covering the community health, and how, at the end, I can say as a school board member, the priority of the school district is to ensure that the safety of the students and the families and the staff, but also, ensuring that we're balancing a budget. So all very, very necessary information. And then climate justice, very integrated into the work that we do as leaders. But I really enjoyed learning about the work that you guys are doing, and I'm grateful for the time that you have spent sharing this information. So thank you again. And now I would like to introduce my colleague, Mercedes, and Hazel Chandler, who Mercedes is the Las Vegas organizer, and Hazel is the Arizona field organizer. And we're going to have a conversation with them about the work that we do. So Mercedes.
Great, thank you so much, Ylenia. My name is Mercedes McKinley, and I am the Nevada State organizer for Moms Clean Air Force, and also Eco Madres, which is our Latino engagement program. So this is really, really exciting. I'm a former elementary school teacher here with the Clark County School District. So just like Jane said, I'm going to piggyback on some of the things she said. Riding in an electric vehicle is a quiet, no vibration experience, which, as she mentioned, anything that can help calm the children before school. I can tell you, I worked at 2 different schools. One had a recess before class and one didn't. And the one that didn't, they were a lot calmer. So, I really can resonate with that. Anything to not only help the kids be healthier on the way to school, but to help keep them calm, especially in this crazy world we live in, right, with rush hour traffic and things like that. The other thing that I find really wonderful is, just since it's emissions free, it can actually help improve cognitive function, and it decreases absenteeism, since asthma is one of the leading causes that kids miss school for. And it's also a really great opportunity for students to see science, technology, and engineering come to life. A lot of the kids in Title I schools, which are low-income schools in East and North Las Vegas, those are the schools that I serve, would not have the opportunity to ride an electric vehicle, out of their own family resources or courts. So just the fact that we can bring this technology to our low-income minority neighborhoods and have the students experience this and, guide them toward these very high-need fields that we have, it's really, really wonderful. And in comparison to diesel buses, the electric ones require less maintenance over time. So saving dollars that could be better spent in the classroom, and the regenerative braking system results in less wear. So there's no need for engine or exhaust system maintenance. Depending on the cost of electricity and fuel, the electric school buses can also be more economical to run. Let's jump over to the next slide. Few seconds. There we go. So what are we looking at? A very familiar image, unfortunately, and I know for me here in Las Vegas. And it's really a toxic soup of gases that is created by diesel exhaust, and it has 40 known carcinogens. It's linked to various detrimental impacts on human health. Children are particularly vulnerable because they breathe more air per pound of body mass, and their bodies are still developing. Air pollution also impacts our ability to concentrate and learn. And just as I mentioned in the previous slide, diesel exhaust is an asthma trigger. Diesel exhaust is known to trigger asthma attacks and other respiratory inflammation and irritation. Asthma is the leading cause of school absenteeism, and a study from the University of Michigan public health epidemiologist estimates that transitioning to clean school buses across the country could result in 14 million fewer absences among bus riding children per typical school year. And again, as Ylenia mentioned, we have approximately 150,000 students here in the Las Vegas area that depend on these services. It also has negative impacts. So breathing in this toxic soup of carcinogens has direct impacts on health and learning. Diesel fumes are known to be associated with headaches, nausea, poor concentration, impaired cognitive performance, and behavioral patterns, making it difficult for students to learn once they arrive in the classroom. There was a recent study, just really quickly, that I'd like to share, where they took out the air filters in a school, and just changing out air filters increased test scores by 5%. So there's many different areas where we can see the effects of this. So, and then I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to my friend and colleague, Hazel in Phoenix, Arizona.
Hi, I apologize for getting on late. I had the pleasure to be at an event down in Phoenix Union High School or school district at the Bioscience High School with the Health and Human Services Cabinet Director today to talk about their resiliency, sustainability officers that are part of the Youth Student Council, which is a program, a part of City of Phoenix. So it was amazing to be there, to see these kids and hear these kids talk about their passion for this work. And I have a number of the superintendents from the school districts that participate that were there. I had a conversation with the Creighton School District superintendent, and she was one of the school districts that did a clean school bus early in the program. Isaac School District is also part of that. To me, this is a dream come true. I worked with a lot of our inner city Phoenix area school districts back in 2006 through 2008 on protecting children from air pollution and asthma. And one of the things that I just saw over and over again was these children who were waiting for their school buses were having asthma attacks. And I watched it happen. I watched a little girl almost die. I personally have asthma, and I was having to carry my inhaler just to go to be there during those times when the children were being picked up. So I cannot stress to you enough how important it is to get these buses into our school districts and let our kids have some relief from especially those with asthma, but with it really impacts all children and their ability to learn. It was a highlight of my life to be able to actually ride and sit in the driver's seat of a clean school bus at Isaac School District when we did a press conference last spring. You know, this was a way to represent moms in a way that I can't tell you how amazing it was. It's clean. I didn't have any respiratory issues at all riding in that bus, and that was so great. So for me, this cannot be important enough to make sure that all of our school districts know about the opportunity to get clean buses, and that we all work together to not only maximize the money that's coming in through the EPA rebate and grant programs, but also find every other way we can to begin making sure that every child rides a clean bus. We have been doing texting and campaigns through moms and email campaigns out to our members, asking them to call their school districts and make sure they know about this program. Like I said, we did the press conference with Isaac School District. And this was with a borrowed bus at that point in time, but I'm happy to announce that Isaac School District will have 50% of their buses will be clean buses by the time they're all received in March of this next year. They have 6 buses on the way. They have a total of 12 buses. So they are making a huge commitment to this. It's really exciting to see this beginning to happen. We have several rural schools as well that are part of this program. So this is a really, really important opportunity. So I can't encourage you enough. Apply for this money. All of us are willing to do anything we can to help you. If you're funded, we want to make sure that we let everyone know and help you celebrate this win, because this is a huge win. And we're really looking forward to working with you on an ongoing basis and finding ways that we can expand it so we are buying no more diesel buses. The diesel is not only dangerous for the children riding the bus drivers, but also people in the communities where the buses are stopping and starting. So we just have to commit to moving in this direction. And I'm really hoping that you got what you needed today to get your application in, and we'll keep our fingers crossed that you'll be funded.
Thank you, Hazel. That's great news for Isaac, and thank you for all the work that you've been doing. And as well, thank you, Mercedes, for sharing about your work with moms. We know that moms takes this serious. And I also wanted to thank our speakers who did an amazing job, Esperanza, Perez, and Jane Israel. Thank you very much for sharing your insights and the very useful information. Now I'd like to open it up for questions, and we have a couple questions, and I know that Lauren will be assisting from the EPA with some of the questions. So we have some questions in the chat already. The first question is to Ms. Lauren. Does the prioritization list ever change?
Yes. Okay. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so the prioritization, the main criteria, high need, low income, rural, tribal, that doesn't change. But the metrics we use for high need in particular and rural can change year to year. So last year, we used the 2021 SAPE data set, or maybe it was 2020. And so it's updated each year, so it might change. You might be eligible as a prioritized school district one year and not another year, depending on what your status is.
If I could just add one piece of that, or one additional element to that too. I know EPA this round has noted the distinction in allotments of funding. So the 60% to go towards prioritized school districts and the 40% to go towards non-prioritized. I know when we've talked with districts across different regions, they've expressed interest in that, given EPA hasn't previously awarded districts that weren't priority districts. So if you are not priority this round, there is some funding potentially that's going to be available to you. I don't know, Esperanza, if you want to add anything to that. I know we've heard some excitement from some districts that were not priority before.
Yeah, definitely. So last year we did most of our funding did go to prioritized school district, and obviously we heard back from non-prioritized school districts that they wanted a chance. And so, like you mentioned, so this time around, there is a split, not definitive, obviously, but there's 60-40 kind of split, basically ensuring that some non-prioritized school districts will be selected, as opposed to last year where it was kind of, very, very slim number of non-prioritized were selected.
Great, thank you. Thank you, ladies. The next question, either to Lauren or Esperanza or Jane. Can schools get help from the EPA's technical assistance centers for help with their application?
Go ahead, Lauren.
Okay, I was going to say, so yes, you can get assistance from the technical assistance centers. There are, I believe, over 10 across the country. Different regions have at least one that are kind of specialized in their area. They cannot write the application for you, but they can provide support in developing that application and reviewing those applications.
Wonderful. Esperanza, is there anything you'd like to add?
No.
Okay. Well, there are no other questions in the chat. I'm not sure if the attendees have any other questions. You can unmute yourself or send it through the chat if there are any other questions that you have. Those are the only ones that we had during the presentation, but feel free to unmute yourself or send a question via the chat if you have one. I know that some of our attendees either are with the operations and maintenance departments or with the superintendent's office. So, the questions can vary depending on, which department you represent, because that's going to be more of your perspective. So not sure if there are any other questions. Okay, well, we don't have any other questions, it seems like. Is there anything that you guys would like to share before we close out? I know that you guys gave really thorough presentations, but if there's anything that you'd like to share before we close out, this is an opportunity to do so.
I would just, once again, like to echo what Esperanza said about deadlines. For the Clean School Bus Program, January 31st at 4 p.m. Eastern, and also just to echo what she said about SAM.gov. As folks are heading into the holiday season, I know it becomes a very busy time, but I would check that today if you can, or tomorrow, and just make sure that you have all of that information up and ready to go, because as we've help districts through their application cycles in previous rounds. If you don't have those sort of pieces readily available, it can be difficult to apply on your own. So just keep those in mind. And if you have to coordinate with EPA to get the SAM.gov, that can also take a little bit of time. And so just consider those two things in particular. And then just to offer always our support to sort of help districts think through the kind of grant writing piece of this puzzle. We're happy to do that on their behalf. But thank you all so much. Really appreciated the conversation today.
Esperanza, Lauren, any other last words before, and then Hazel, you can go after.
Nothing else. Thank you, Jane, for reiterating the deadlines and the SAM.gov. Those are very important. And then just for folks, if you do have questions later on, please sign up for the office hours. We'll be there. Hopefully we'll see folks there. And maybe you can't make it to the office hours, you can always send us an email. That information's also in the PowerPoint, and I will share that with moms so that you all can distribute it.
I just wanted to say this is recorded and we will share the recording. with you, and if you know of other schools or superintendents or people within your school districts that are interested, we'll be happy to share it as wide as possible. You know, I think this is helpful in filling out the application, and so please share.
Thank you, Hazel, for the reminder. And just one question from me, you know, just to end, what is the most challenging thing? I know that when we applied in my former role, we only had 2 weeks, and 2 weeks isn't enough time. And we got very lucky, but like, what is the most challenging thing that you guys experience with school districts when they are applying?
I will say, I think what we've seen the most, especially the last round, was the SAM.gov registration. A lot of school districts, either their registration had expired or they weren't the correct contact. So just trying to figure out all that SAM.gov is what took the most. Once you're kind of through that hurdle, the actual application process is pretty simple. It's information you should already have. So really emphasizing SAM.gov, make sure you have that ready.
Awesome, thank you. Besides the deadline, January 31st, and making sure that you have all your credentials or the correct information for sam.gov, I think those are the biggest, you know, the most important information to know. Well, again, thank you very much, and I will give you guys your 4 minutes back. I really appreciate all of the information. We at Moms are extremely grateful for our partnership and the collaboration between us. We know that this work isn't, you know, just moms driven. We need to continue to share the information, as Hazel mentioned, and this will be pre-recorded and saved on, and we can share this with as many people, and it's going to live in our YouTube site. But I really am grateful for the opportunity to connect and to share this meaningful information that our school leaders need to have. And yes, thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.